Welcome to the Zero Excuses channel, where we don't make excuses, we make things happen. My name is Zeb, and I've been getting a lot of questions about my leg and people asking me to make videos. And so we will launch right into the story of how I became who I am, a big part of who I am. So in 1996, September 2nd of 96, first day of 8th grade, I got home after my 2-hour bus ride, living way out in Chickaloon, Alaska. Ran up my driveway, threw my stuff down as I normally did, excited the season was almost over to get on my dirt bike. Went over to my YZ80, filled it up. My buddy was meeting me. I already heard him as I was coming down the driveway. We intersected right at the bottom of my driveway, headed up the road. The road hit a T. I had passed him before the T, and then we started going up the road where it kind of went into a wide turnaround area, and the state road actually ended, and then it was a private road which became way more narrow with a fence on the right, trees on the left, basically a one-lane road. So I passed him, and I was pulling a wheelie up through that turnaround area when all of a sudden a truck came around the corner. And I tried to lean forward and put the bike down, but it did not go down in time and head on with the truck, who did not move out of the way one bit. Later, found out he was drunk, coming home from the bar, as many people did in this small area of rural Chickaloon, Alaska, 2 hours from the hospital that I was airlifted to and an hour from the nearest town. So I slammed in the truck head on. I was out. I remember just waking up, leaning forward and looking down, seeing a big pool of black around my leg and about 5 inches of my bone sticking out of my leg. I didn't feel any pain. I felt completely at peace, and I just laid my head back, closed my eyes. Next thing I know, my mom is slapping me. Zeb, wake up, wake up. My buddy had ran through the woods to my house, which was right there. Got my mom, and she was an EMT at the time, and she was like slapping me, trying to wake me up. And I was like, oh, get off me, She was like, wiggle your toes. Can you feel this? Can you wiggle your toes? And I'm just like groaning, like kind of like, get off me, because in that moment I digress. When I closed my eyes and laid my head back down, it was just like the most peaceful experience ever. It was ethereal. I could hear like the birds chirping. I could feel the sun on my skin, the warmth. And there was kind of a moment where I floated, it was like basically above my body. I could see, I wasn't looking down at myself, but I could kind of see everything. Everything was clear, everything was calm, everything was peaceful, and I was bleeding out, essentially dying. So anyway, then I'm slapped back to reality by my mother. Then the ambulance arrives. I'm kind of in and out of consciousness. I remember screaming then, and my buddy was afraid to walk back past me because of the bloodthirsty or blood-awful screams that he heard me emitting. So my friend Kyle is too scared and just in shock to walk back past me because of the scene that he's seeing. The blood stain remained on the ground for a month, from what I was told. Just imprinted on the ground. I mean, I lost copious amounts of blood. My femur had severed my femoral artery, so I was just bleeding out. Albeit the guy who was hit me was drunk. He did save my leg by tying a rope around my leg, stemming the bleeding, basically creating a tourniquet to stop the blood from the femoral artery, which you will bleed out in a matter of minutes if that's not stopped. So the ambulance arrives from Sutton, which is 15 miles away. They're poking me, prodding me with all these needles and, getting me prepped as they're rushing me to Sutton, where the helicopter had flown out from Providence Hospital, which was in Anchorage, 80 miles away. So they met there, and then my experience is just in and out, just the chopper. I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it, I'm waking up, like in and out, just like being poked and stabbed all over with these needles, and things over my face and stuff like that. So I remember just like snippets, and then I was unloaded at Providence, and then there was like, I don't even know, 2 days where I don't know how much time had gone by, but it was a couple days where I was just out. And then I woke up, and when I say I felt like death, I felt like death. I felt like ran over, I felt like I'd been turned inside out. Just like dry as throat, puking, just like, I don't know, I feel like I've been in a hole in a cave just like for months. I felt like it'd been months, and I can't even describe how bad I felt. I just woke up in a fog. I couldn't really see. My vision was all blurry. It was like my guts were outside of my body. I felt like I like kind of looked up in the bed, and just like my whole leg was just bandaged up, but they couldn't actually wrap it up because it needed to be exposed, kind of, so they just kind of had it packed with gauze and stuff like that, because basically an injury of that type, any injury, has to heal from the inside out, so you can't just like sew it closed or wrap it up. They were still figuring out what they had to do to fix it, so they just had it packed with gauze, basically. So it was just like yellow, purple, bloody meat. It was disgusting. So anyway, I felt like I'd been run over, because I had been run over. Fucking, it was insane. Like, take the worst hangover you've ever had, times it by 3,000. Even being on a bunch of pain meds. Anyway, I just kind of like went back out of it, so the reason being also that nothing had happened, my leg was packed with gauze and stuff, was because my mother refused to sign the paperwork to have them chop off my leg, because as soon as they got to the hospital, the doctor was like, let's just amputate the leg. It's going to be the quickest solution. He'll, bam, move on with life, get a prosthesis, and then, he's good to go. She was like, no, save the leg. And she just absolutely went back and forth, refused. So, gets me emotional. So, Mom saved my leg. Thank goodness, because I couldn't imagine, like, when they told me they were going to amputate my toes, I like freaked out, started crying, like, it was like the end of the world, right? I can only imagine if they're going to take my whole leg. And even with the height difference that I now have, which is about 1 inch, and toes missing, I still, like, the second toe, you get pressure sores there. So I can only imagine when they take off your leg, you're going to have to put the stump into a boot, and so there's going to be a pressure sore on there. And then also your leg falls off, things fall off, and this is also like 22 years ago, roughly. So anyway, or actually more than that. But anyway, things were not as scientific, and we weren't as advanced as we are today, so it would have been much more of a hurdle. So anyway, she refused. The doctor was like, okay, fuck it, we gotta do what we gotta do. And so he just went to work, man. So, but not right away, clearly. So I'm in the hospital, just woke up, and they're still figuring out what to do with it, right? The vastus medialis muscle had been completely destroyed, where the bone had ripped through. So they decided to do a latissimus dorsi transplant. So they took my whole latissimus dorsi, which is the largest muscle in your back, and like 57 staples after removing that, and put that into my knee. But that was not the only surgery I had. That was one of them. That was a 13-hour surgery for that one. Overall total time, if I'm going to skip to the end, is I spent 2 months in ICU. And over 9 different surgeries. And in the meantime, before they could do the surgeries, while they're still letting things heal, they had, the pig skin basically over it. So I do whirlpool baths every like 3 days to clean everything out. Also, in that time period, and in the beginning stages, it must have been shortly after I woke up the first time, I had coded, meaning basically I was dying. I died. So I was coding because I was too weak to actually physically keep myself alive. So they had to do a hospital-induced coma. So they put me into a coma just to keep me alive. Now, Coming out of that, so after waking up, feeling like death, I woke up after they took me out of the coma because they have a breathing tube down your throat, clearly because you're not breathing on your own. They have a machine that's breathing for you. It feels like they just pulled a radiator hose out of your throat. Insane. Like, you're just like, I'm like just gasping. And then I'm always asking. It was basically 2 months of asking for water. Like, water, can I have water, please? But since I kept having surgery after surgery after surgery, as anybody who's had surgery knows, you cannot have any liquids. You can't have water. So they would give me ice water or ice chunks. And I would sit there and just suck on those, and just like, it was a godsend, or the biggest blessing ever, when the ice would melt till there was like enough water to where I could get like 1 or 2 solid gulps. So it was basically, like I said, 2 months of that. Thirsty as fuck. Feeling like I'd been just ripped apart and turned inside out, because I basically had, of course, bedpans and like, or a catheter, which also, like, you'll feel a slight pinch when they pull out the catheter. Felt like they ripped a golf ball out of my, what. So, and there's a few times of those, and leaving that in there for an extended period of time, it's not pleasant, like, it's rather relatively painful. Also, you always feel like you have to pee. So, anybody who's done shows can relate when you're cutting carbs and you have no carbs in your body and no fat in your body, and you're drinking the gallon of water a day and you gotta pee all the time. You can relate. So anyway, that is part of my experience. We will pick back up with more on part 2.